Hey everyone, and welcome back. Now today I want to talk about something really important, because the fact that like 99% of people in crypto don't do this is why they stay poor and why they never make any money. And what this is selling the bag. I mean, obviously this is something that, I don't think anybody really ever wants to talk about, especially when we're sitting at, all-time highs and everybody's making a ton of money and all this type of stuff. And obviously, you're kind of the crazy, idiot who is wanting to like sell when things just keep going up another 10% every single day, right? I understand. I've been there before. It's incredibly difficult to do, which is why I wanted to make this video. And hopefully, you save it, share it, do something so you can kind of hang on to it. I know we're really kind of not in that mania zone yet, but I did want to make this video just so we're kind of preparing for that inevitability. So when we get there, it's not just like completely taking us by surprise. And also, let's be honest, if I were to post this when we're hitting all-time highs, no one would probably watch it anyway, because we're all going to be drunk on all the money that we've made and all the mania and all that type of stuff. So anyway, like I said, I would highly recommend that you keep this somewhere or find some way to refer back to it when things start to get a little bit crazy, because I guarantee you, I can't tell you how many like 100x's and all this type of stuff that I've round tripped because I didn't do this. And so this is something I think is very important. And if you want to make any amount of money in this crypto bull run, like you have to do this. Like there's just no other way. And so anyway, let's go on ahead, dive right in. We'll check it out. But yeah, this is selling the bag. The first rule here is create rules and stick to them, more importantly, because if you create rules that you don't follow, then obviously you're going to have a problem. And so that's kind of the first rule here. With this, there's kind of multiple different ways that we can think about this. These are kind of some example rules. Obviously, you need to figure out what kind of makes sense and what is best for you, given your kind of like risk tolerance and your investing strategy, things like that. If you're dealing with something that's like a micro cap, then maybe the first rule where you take half out at 3x, maybe that's a good idea, because essentially at that point, if you take half out at 3x and then basically just sell or like set a stop loss for the rest at break even or something like that, you're essentially locking in 50% gains, and with the hope that as this thing goes to 5, 10, 50, 100, 200, whatever, however many x's we get from there, it's all just extra play money. And a lot of people in crypto will call this like a moon bag, right? So, and then from there, you can take a little bit out of 5x, take a little bit out of 10x, take a little bit, but in the possibility that you don't take out ever, you at least have locked in some gains, right? Next one, something similar, sell 75% at 2x. I think this ultimately works out to be like a 25 to 33% gain overall, even if you just set the rest at stop loss. Because then same type of thing, you've got your 25% moon bag, and if that 100x's or whatever, then obviously you're gonna make a very substantial amount of money, but you're out early and only essentially playing with house money at that point in time. Very important thing to do, because one, it gives you liquidity to continue to invest in like new projects that come along, but also it just keeps your risk off the table and really even banks you a little bit of profit as you're going. Next one, same type of thing, sell 90% at 50%. Generally it's like you want to sell more at lower gains when you're dealing with like larger market cap coins, just because they don't move as much, and there's not necessarily more risk with them, but the chance of you hitting 100x or something is relatively low. And so you want to essentially kind of de-risk on smaller moves, just to make sure that one, you're keeping your initials off the table, and two, you're banking at least a little bit of profit. And usually to do something like that, you need to sell more, particularly when you're at like lower gain percentage thresholds. So obviously you need to make your own decision here. This is not financial advice at all. Some of these are rules that work for me, but you really, the most important thing is you have to understand your investment strategy and what works for you, and then follow that. This rule number one, set your rules and follow them. They can be whatever rules you want them to be. And honestly, it's probably going to take a little bit of kind of playing around and trying things out to really understand it and hone in on those rules, but it's very important that you do that. So rule number two is do not if only. And the reason I put this after rule number one is because I can almost guarantee you, when you go and you follow your rules and you take out your initials and you leave a moon bag, let's say you put in $1,000 into something, and at 3x you take your 50% out, right? So you've taken $1,500 out, you now have banked 50% profit, you've made $500, and the rest of the $1,500 is sitting in for free, basically. Well, let's say this would be like really uncommon, right? But let's just say from there, at 1000x's. Well, that 50% that you left in would be worth $1.5 million, which is obviously amazing gains, super good, and really, like, I mean, you struck the jackpot, obviously, right? Well, the most important thing that you don't do is you don't if only. I mean, there have been so many times where it's like, oh, well, if I would have just diamond hands this whole thing, I would have made 50 grand or something. And instead I made, $1,200 or 12 grand or, something like that. You always have to remember profit is profit, and that's important. But also, in addition to that, you can't if only, because what you will do is you'll sit there and be like, oh man, I would have made, an extra $1.5 million on this one token that I instead sold for $1,500. But you're not going to think about all of the other tokens that maybe, you went up and you followed your rule and then it crashes down to zero. And because of your rule, you actually made money there. Now, if you were to get super, super lucky, well then maybe that's okay, right? Like you can expect all of yours to go to zero as long as you make 2-3 million on one. Sure, but this is why you need to develop your own investment strategy, right? Because I know there are some people that do that. For me, that just doesn't really work for me, right? So I've come up with different rules that have, different types of like triggers and stuff like that. But the most important part with whatever you come up with is do not if only, because even if you just hold everything to zero, well, some of these may 100x, but you don't sell unless they 1000x, right? And so you could if only if only I sold this at 100x, then I would have made 100 grand, but instead I'm back, I've round tripped $1,000 or something like that, right? Well, that sucks too. So what you have to do is you have to make sure that you make your rules, you stick to them, and you don't if only, because you will always, and I'm going to remove my pictures so you guys can read all the things that are going on here, but you will always, like, you could have always done better looking with hindsight, right? I mean, I look at trades I've done so many times, I'm like, oh, I only put $1,000 into this, but it did 100x. I should have put 100 grand into it. Well, of course. I mean, if everybody knew that was going to happen, everybody would do it. And so you're always going to have the benefit of hindsight when you're looking back. So just if onlying is a really dangerous game, so you just really shouldn't do it. Make sure you've got your rules, you stick to them, and you understand you will be leaving money on the table almost always. But the fact that you're consistent is really the goal, and that's really what's important here. So step 3, believe the metrics. Now, what I mean by believe the metrics here is there are guidelines for a reason, right? I mean, just because historically they've been good indicators. And so if you see that the RSI is overbought, probably because it means there's going to be a pullback at some point in time. Now, that's not to say it's going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to say it's going to happen next week. It's not going to say, it's going to happen next month. But theoretically, there's going to be some level of pullback coming. That's just how it goes, right? I mean, when the MACD crosses or stuff like this happens, like, these are indicators for a reason, because generally they kind of tell you a story. If we're looking, on the channel, we look at the fear and greed index constantly. If we're in a period of extreme greed, it usually means it's a good time to sell. If we're in a period of extreme fear, it usually means it's a good time to buy. There are these rules because they have historically worked out really, really well, right? And I mean, so that's kind of that's the whole point here, is like, just because, like, don't ignore the indicators just because you are currently happening to make money. Like, the indicators make sense for a reason, and they're used for a reason. So if something starts to show that we might be seeing a pullback, then, like, you shouldn't just ignore that because you made 10% today on your total portfolio and you made 10% tomorrow and all this type of stuff. Like, you need to understand that they're there for a reason. So anyway, that's rule number 3. Now, rule number 4 is this time is not different. And this, again, is kind of directly following up on rule number 3 for that exact reason of, at the top, like, you will always hear, well, this time's different. Well, this is this, and last time did this, and this time did that, and this, well, whatever else. You're going to hear it all the time. Like, it's not different. Just look at history, look at what we've seen in the past, look at what we've seen in all the different bull runs. When everybody says, oh yeah, the 4-year cycle's broken, like, yeah, maybe we could break the 4-year cycle this time, but historically we haven't, right? And even the move up that we've seen this cycle, right on schedule. I mean, go look at the timeline of how this has all been matched up with prior cycles. It's almost perfect with what we've seen in prior cycles. And so my whole thing here is like, no, this time's not different. Like, you might think it is, but it's not. And if you think it is, you're probably going to get wrecked, because you're not going to be really planning ahead or planning on or foreseeing the coming bear market. And, if you're in some of these, tokens that have gone up 10x and you bought the top, like, you're going to get wrecked, even though you may be up 2x at the top. it's going to come down well below what you would have seen prior. And so, that's kind of the main the main 4 rules here that I wanted to go over. Like I said, at the top, this is not going to be a really popular thing to talk about. Probably will not get any views if I'm being completely honest. I'll probably talk about it again anyway, but it'll be largely kind of yelling into the void, I think. But overall, hopefully you're understanding and like you're appreciative of these types of rules, just because right now I think most people still have their rational heads on a little bit, but don't trust me, I'm no different than anybody else. As we get into this kind of ultra mania phase, things are going to get wild. All of us are going to think oh yeah, this is crazy. We're making so much money. This time is different. It's not. Just keep this video somewhere where you can refer back to it if you think you're getting a little too carried away, because trust me, if you want to figure out the hard way yourself, that's totally fine. But I've lost enough money or lost enough gains, essentially. I've round tripped enough 100x's and all that type of stuff that you shouldn't have to. If you want to anyway to figure it out on your own, that's totally your prerogative, because obviously this is not investment advice. I'm just trying to help you learn from things that I've done in the past, and you can kind of do what you want with that. So anyway, hopefully you found the information in this video useful. If you did, please do give me a like and subscribe, because it really, really does help me out. Also, I will be providing continuing recurring content just on kind of what's going on within the market, continuing to share my thoughts, where things are looking, all that type of stuff. So if you are interested, that would be a great way to kind of continue following the content that I'm producing. Also, if you have any comments, questions, concerns, anything like that, the comment section would be a great place to put those. I do try to read and respond to all of them, so if you have anything you want me to see, that'd be a great way to do so. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.